So, with this whole social distancing thing going on, and having had a ton of free time, I decided that now that Evangelion and its movies are now available on Netflix, I'd finally give it a watch. And oh god, it's some heavy shit. So, let's talk about it. So, let's clear something up. I watched the Netflix English dub of Evangelion for convenience, along with the fact that when it first became available on Netflix, there was a lot of outrage over the redubbing of Evangelion to replace the original ADV dub. So I wanted to see if Netflix's dub was good or not. As a first time experience, honestly, it was pretty good. Didn't dislike any of the voices. Loved Misato, both Shinji's friends, and Kaji's voice. Moving on though. The first half or so of the series was very episodic, and honestly, these were my favourite episodes, with them just focusing on Shinji just adjusting to his new life and introducing early signs of his mental issues and stuff like that, along with the fun interactions between all the characters with subtle undertones, subtle darker undertones, which makes the characters more likable, including Shinji's friends Ada and Toji. My favourite characters besides Misato, Kaji, and Asuka. Especially Toji for me, because honestly, he's the type of person I respect, doing anything for his family and the people he cares about, along with just being a solid bro. Which makes what happens to him in I think episode 19, correct me if I'm wrong, probably the most painful in the entire show. On top of this, the show is credited with also being the origin of the modern Best Girl War debates, where we're introduced to the three main girls, Asuka, Rei, and Misato, of which Misato is my favourite with her trauma and abandoning issues, and the way she raises Shinji, basically, pseudo raises him, is kind of admirable, you know? I also like Asuka, but honestly it shocks me that Rei is the overall favourite among the fans, because although her existence itself turns into a really interesting mystery where it had me constantly wondering whether Shinji's mother was Rei or the robot. Her herself though just really came across as a tool for Gendo until the end of Evangelion. Speaking of Gendo, Jesus, how many of the fucking nerve women has this guy manipulated and fucked? Christ, for somebody who's obsessed with reuniting with his wife Yui, he sure hooks up with a ton of other women after Yui's death. Although the guy got what he had coming to him, you know what I mean? At the end of Evangelion. Which itself confuses me. I'm not sure entirely whether the end of Evangelion replaces the show's ending, or whether it takes place before and after episodes 25 and 26 respectively. But the latter option is basically impossible, as Shinji in the show rejects human instrumentality and it accepts his issues and hang-ups, and then causes the show to end in a rather confusing way in first watch, but good nonetheless, you know what I mean? Whereas end of Evangelion, during the instrumentality, it has Shinji kind of turn up his need for attention to the max. It has him obsess over receiving love, particularly from Asuka, possibly because of what happens to her during the series, where like she kind of dies, or either what happened with Karu. I'm not really sure, to be honest. Either way, when Asuka rejects him, he strangles her, and then it switches to him monologuing about how they should love him and how he deserves their love and why don't they love him. Very narcissistic stuff, but he's then confronted by Rei and Karu, in which he's told about the importance of human connection, and he decides to stop human instrumentality, which could have added on to episode 26 if it wasn't for what happens next, in which him and Asuka are surrounded by a sea of red, And even though Shinji has accepted his issues and promised to move forward making connections with people, he chooses to strangle the real Asuka instead of trying to connect with her. Now don't get me wrong, an ending where a frail, mentally unstable 14-year-old single-handedly caused the complete extinction of the human race is extremely interesting. But the previous scenes caused this to not make any sense due to Shinji's previous resolution. But I still really do love the series and can absolutely see why Evangelion is a revolutionary anime and is considered a classic.